Most men over 60 have no idea that their daily routine, the one they've followed for years, the one that feels completely normal, may be quietly working against their prostate health. And they don't realize it until they find themselves waking up 2, 3, sometimes 4 times every single night just to use the bathroom. Here's what concerns me most. The habits causing it don't look dangerous. Not smoking, not drinking heavily, not doing anything extreme or reckless. Just ordinary routines, repeated quietly, every single day, for years. But here's what most men genuinely don't understand. Your prostate is sensitive to daily inflammation, circulation changes, stress hormones, sitting patterns, hydration timing, and blood sugar fluctuations after meals. All things that are completely within your control. The advice most men get when they bring this up to a doctor? It's just part of getting older. That's what happens. That explanation is incomplete, because aging alone doesn't explain why some men in their late 70s sleep through the night without interruption, while other men at 58 already feel chained to the bathroom. Maybe you've already noticed some of these signs yourself. A weaker stream than there used to be, more urgency, less warning, that maddening feeling your bladder never fully empties, sleep that used to be deep, now fractured into pieces, and mornings that start with fatigue already built in, before the day has even begun. Most men quietly absorb all of this. They push it down. They adjust their lives around it without even realizing that's what they're doing. The thing that's quietly aging your prostate faster than almost anything else is probably hiding inside your everyday routine. In a few minutes, I'll show you exactly what it is and why it matters far more than any supplement you've ever seen advertised online. Hi, I'm Dr. Hannah Blake, internal medicine physician and healthy aging specialist. I've spent over 15 years working with men over 50 who came to me frustrated, confused, and quietly embarrassed. Men who had been told, "It's just aging," so many times they had started to believe it. Today, I'm going to be the person who gives you what they didn't. Straight answers, real context, and practical steps you can actually take, starting this week. And I want to say this clearly. This isn't about fear. It's about awareness. Prostate changes happen gradually, silently, and without obvious warning signs at first. That silence is exactly what makes them so easy to ignore until they've been building for years. As always, everything I share here is for educational purposes only. Please consult your own physician before making any changes to your health routine. Let's talk about what's actually happening inside your body, and why the standard conversation about prostate health keeps missing the most important pieces entirely. Picture this scene. You've been asleep for maybe 2 hours, and then, without any warning, you're wide awake. You climb out of bed in the dark, walk to the bathroom half asleep, stand there waiting, and the stream, when it finally comes, feels weaker than you remember. You climb back into bed, close your eyes, and you already know, before you even drift off, that you're going to be doing this again in another 90 minutes. Now picture the daytime version. You're driving, maybe 30 miles from the next exit. Out of nowhere, that sudden urgency, that pressure that wasn't there 2 minutes ago and now feels impossible to ignore. Or you're sitting through dinner with your wife, with your grandkids, and somewhere in the back of your mind, you're already calculating. Where's the bathroom? How far? How long before you need to excuse yourself? Not pain, just pressure, just urgency, just constant background awareness. And slowly, so slowly you barely notice it happening, this becomes your normal. But your body isn't broken, it's trying to tell you something. The question is whether you're listening, because when urinary symptoms continue unchecked, the downstream effects reach far beyond just the bathroom. Sleep quality deteriorates, the deep, restorative kind your body needs for hormonal regulation, cellular repair, and energy. Research increasingly links chronic poor sleep with elevated inflammatory markers, disrupted hormonal signaling, and impaired metabolic function. None of these are small things. All of them compound each other. And there's something men rarely say out loud. When urgency is always lurking in the background, when you're constantly planning around your bladder instead of living your life, it quietly erodes your confidence. Long drives become stressful. Evening events become something to assess rather than enjoy. Travel, something you may have looked forward to your whole working life, becomes complicated. Most men carry this silently. They assume it's inevitable. They figure there's nothing meaningful to be done. But aging and neglect are two very different things, and most men are never taught to tell them apart. Stay with me. What I'm about to explain next completely changes how most men understand prostate health. And it reveals why so much conventional advice keeps missing the real point. Most men, when they think about prostate health, think about one organ, one problem. But the prostate doesn't exist in isolation. It's affected by what you eat, how you move, how you sleep, how you manage stress, what your blood sugar does after meals, and how much you sit every day. Sometimes it isn't one big health problem. It's 6 or 7 small habits stacking quietly on top of each other, every single day, for years. Hours of uninterrupted sitting, poor hydration timing, chronic low-grade stress that never fully resolves, diets heavy in processed foods and refined sugar, late-night alcohol, physical movement that's dropped off gradually without you noticing. None of these seem serious in any given moment, but together, over time, they create exactly the internal environment where inflammation thrives and where prostate health suffers most. Most men don't realize any of this is happening until symptoms have already taken over their schedule. And by then, many have convinced themselves that decline is inevitable. It isn't, and that's what I'm going to show you next. Think of your prostate and urinary system like a pressure and plumbing network. When everything is balanced, good circulation, low inflammation, relaxed musculature, healthy hormonal signaling, the system runs efficiently. Flow is strong, sleep is uninterrupted. But when chronic pressure, persistent inflammation, and sustained muscle tension start building over months and years, the system becomes progressively less efficient. And that's when symptoms begin appearing. Mechanism 1. Chronic systemic inflammation. The prostate tissue is highly sensitive to the body's inflammatory environment. Not just local irritation, but systemic inflammation building quietly in the background. Research suggests diets consistently high in ultra-processed foods, refined sugars, and excess alcohol promote inflammatory pathways throughout the body. After 50, the ability to regulate and resolve inflammation becomes less efficient than it was at 30. Think of it like a small irritation you never properly address. Over months and years of repeated exposure, it quietly aggravates surrounding tissue, affects urinary flow, increases pressure sensations, and contributes to the nighttime discomfort most men accept as normal aging. It isn't. It's the body responding to chronic daily inputs that nobody ever pointed out. Mechanism 2. The hidden cost of prolonged sitting. This one genuinely surprised me when I first looked carefully at the research. On the surface, sitting seems harmless, just resting. But extended, uninterrupted sitting reduces healthy circulation through the pelvic region, increases compressive pressure around the prostate, and promotes muscular tightening in the pelvic floor over time. Think of a garden hose with someone sitting on it. The flow doesn't stop, but the pressure and efficiency drop significantly. Now layer onto that the natural circulation changes of aging, reduced physical activity after retirement, and hours spent in front of screens, and the problem compounds silently over years. Movement isn't just about weight management. It's about blood flow, muscular activation, and hormonal signaling that physically requires activity to function properly. Mechanism 3. The sleep-stress cycle. Interrupted sleep doesn't just leave you tired the next morning. It triggers a cascade of responses that ripple through multiple body systems simultaneously. Research links poor sleep with elevated cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone. Elevated cortisol promotes inflammation, disrupts growth hormone secretion, and elevates baseline muscular tension throughout the body, including in the pelvic floor, which directly surrounds the prostate. Here's the cruel irony. The symptoms disrupting your sleep create the exact hormonal environment that makes those symptoms worse. It becomes a self-reinforcing cycle that tightens gradually over years if nobody ever identifies it. Think of your nervous system like a dimmer switch designed to cycle between high activation during the day and genuine rest at night. For men living under chronic stress, that switch never fully dims. It stays slightly on, slightly tense, all the time, and the pelvic floor feels every bit of it. Here's a number that stopped me when I first encountered it. The majority of men who experience significant nighttime urinary symptoms never once discuss them with a physician. They absorb the disruption, adapt their lives around it, and assume silence is the appropriate response to an embarrassing problem. And that silence costs them years they didn't have to lose. Mechanism 4. Blood sugar instability. This is the mechanism almost nobody discusses, but it may be one of the most important pieces of the entire picture. Frequent blood sugar spikes, driven by refined carbohydrates, added sugars, large late-night meals, and alcohol, promote systemic inflammation, create circulatory strain at the microvascular level, and disrupt the hormonal signaling that helps regulate prostate tissue. After 60, the body processes excess glucose differently than it did at 30. Insulin sensitivity is lower. Recovery from metabolic stress takes longer. Inflammatory responses triggered by blood sugar spikes linger rather than resolving quickly. And because inflammation, hormones, and circulation are all deeply interconnected, metabolic instability affects all of them at once. Nobody is talking about this, but every physician who looks carefully at the evidence understands that daily lifestyle patterns shape prostate health across decades in ways that dwarf anything a single supplement could ever address. Don't stop here. The next section is where everything we've covered finally translates into something real, specific, practical steps you can actually take, and several of them will surprise you. Knowledge without action doesn't change anything. So let's turn everything we've covered into concrete steps you can actually take. Fix 1. Correct your hydration timing. Many men drink very little water during the day, then suddenly consume a large portion of their daily fluids at dinner or late in the evening, right before bed. What happens next is entirely predictable. The kidneys process that fluid load overnight, the bladder fills, and the body sends wake-up signals that fracture sleep. The fix is simple. Prioritize consistent hydration throughout the morning and early afternoon, then consciously ease back in the 2 to 3 hours before bed. Not elimination, just intentional timing. I had a patient, a retired teacher named Robert, who made 0 other changes and simply shifted his hydration earlier. Within 3 weeks, he told me his nights were noticeably calmer. 1 change, real difference. Fix 2. Break up long sitting sessions. I know what many of you are thinking. This sounds too simple to actually matter. But the research on prolonged sitting and pelvic health is not ambiguous. Extended, uninterrupted sitting creates real physiological consequences, and consistent movement breaks create real improvements. You don't need a gym membership or an intense workout routine. You need to refuse to let your body stay static and compressed for hours at a stretch. Set a timer for 50 to 60 minutes. When it goes off, stand up, walk to the kitchen, walk around the yard. 5 minutes is enough to restore circulation, reduce pelvic pressure, and reset the muscle tension patterns sitting builds. After-meal walks are especially valuable. 10 to 15 minutes supports blood sugar regulation, digestion, and circulation at the same time. One of my patients started doing just that, nothing else, and a month later told me he felt less heavy, less congested. His words, not mine. Fix 3. Reassess late-night alcohol. Alcohol consumed close to bedtime acts as a direct bladder irritant, lowering the threshold for urinary urgency. It suppresses the deep sleep stages, slow wave and REM, that your body depends on for hormonal restoration and cellular repair, and it produces a rebound effect in the second half of the night, where sleep becomes lighter, more fragmented, and far less restorative. After 60, the body metabolizes alcohol significantly differently than it did at 40. The same amount that once felt harmless may now meaningfully impair sleep quality and worsen existing urinary symptoms. You may not need to eliminate everything permanently, but honest attention to both quantity and timing can make a meaningful difference faster than most men expect. Community check-in. Drop a comment and tell me where in the world you're watching from. I genuinely read far more comments than most people assume, and seeing men from every corner of the world taking their health seriously means more than I can fully express. Fix 4. Shift toward anti-inflammatory foods. No single food solves this. The overall dietary pattern does. Diets heavy in ultra-processed foods, refined carbohydrates, added sugars, and processed meats promote exactly the inflammatory environment that worsens prostate symptoms over time. Diets built around whole, minimally processed foods, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, berries, healthy fats from olive oil and fatty fish, regulate inflammatory pathways, support hormonal signaling, and stabilize blood sugar. You don't need perfection. You need a consistent directional shift. More whole foods, fewer processed ones, applied steadily over months. One man I worked with replaced his late-night processed snacking with lighter whole food options. Within weeks, his own words were, "I just feel less inflamed." Simple, real, enough. Fix 5. Protect sleep like it's medicine. Deep, high-quality sleep is not a luxury. It is the foundational biological state during which your body performs its most critical repair functions: growth hormone release, cortisol reset, immune surveillance, and pelvic floor tension release. When sleep is consistently fragmented, every one of those processes is compromised, and the deficit compounds night after night. Poor sleep increases cortisol. Elevated cortisol increases inflammation. Inflammation worsens prostate symptoms. Worsened symptoms disrupt sleep further, and the cycle tightens. Building a calming, consistent evening routine is not indulgence, it's strategy. Reducing heavy evening meals. Limiting screens in the hour before bed. Creating a dark, cool, quiet sleeping environment. Maintaining a consistent sleep-wake schedule even on weekends. These habits create the conditions your body needs to actually recover. We're not done yet. Fixes 6 and 7 are the ones most men have genuinely never heard, and Fix 7 may be the most important conversation in this entire video. Stay with me. Fix 6. Actively manage chronic stress. This is the fix that matters more than most men are willing to admit, because stress doesn't stay in the mind. That's not how physiology works. Chronic stress keeps the sympathetic nervous system activated, elevating cortisol, increasing vascular resistance, and raising baseline tone in the pelvic floor musculature. Many men have lived for decades in this state without ever connecting it to their physical symptoms. Some men notice meaningful improvements simply by finding consistent ways to allow their nervous system to genuinely exhale. Walking outdoors, deliberate deep breathing, prayer, contemplative practice, gentle stretching of the hip flexors and lower back. Calm, consistent routines before bed. Not because these are magic, because when the nervous system finally gets permission to rest, the body follows. Fix 7. Stop ignoring early signals. This final fix may be the most important of all. Many men wait far too long before having a real conversation with a healthcare professional about what they're experiencing. Not because they're careless, but because they're embarrassed. Because they're hoping it resolves on its own. Because somewhere deep down, they've associated asking for help with losing something. You do not lose anything by listening to your own body. You protect what you've built. Research consistently indicates that prostate-related concerns are substantially easier to address when identified early rather than after years of accumulation. The gap between noticing something and doing something about it, that is where the most damage quietly happens. Make the appointment. Have the conversation. Ask the questions you've been avoiding. That is not weakness. That is exactly what strength looks like. Before I wrap up, let me cover the mistakes that quietly make all of this worse. Most videos stop before they get here, but this is where real clarity lives. Mistake 1. Treating everything as separate problems. Poor sleep, urinary urgency, low energy, weight gain, mood changes. Most men treat these as completely unrelated issues, but they're not separate. They're the same system expressing stress through different channels simultaneously. Treating the branches while the root continues to grow explains why so many men try different things and never seem to gain traction. Mistake 2. Believing a supplement can replace lifestyle change. Certain nutrients have genuine supportive roles in healthy aging, but no supplement can consistently outperform the compound effect of chronic poor sleep, persistent systemic inflammation, physical inactivity, and unmanaged metabolic stress. The companies selling these products are very good at marketing to men who are exhausted and ready to believe in an easy answer. The honest truth? The most powerful tools available to you are free, unglamorous, and require patience, and they work in ways no pill can replicate. Mistake 3. surrendering mentally before it's necessary. This is the one that troubles me most. I've sat across from too many men who had already decided, somewhere quietly, that their best years were behind them. Yes, aging changes the physiology, but there is an enormous difference between healthy, supported aging and passive, unnecessary decline. Many men experience meaningful improvements in energy, sleep quality, and urinary comfort when they finally commit to supporting their health consistently. Not dramatically, steadily, over months. The goal was never to become 25 again. The goal is to feel strong, clear-headed, rested, and genuinely comfortable in your own life. Present. Ready. That is an attainable target, and the path is consistency, not intensity. I want to tell you about a man I'll call David, 63 years old, former contractor from outside Austin, Texas. A man who had spent 40 years building things with his hands and had never in his life thought of himself as someone who needed to pay careful attention to his health. He was tough. He'd always assumed his body would simply keep up with whatever he demanded of it. He came in after almost 4 years of worsening nighttime urinary symptoms, 4 years of disrupted sleep, 4 years of quietly restructuring his life around bathroom urgency without ever naming that that's what he was doing. When he sat down across from me, he didn't look dramatic. He didn't look alarmed. He just looked exhausted. He told me he couldn't remember the last time he'd slept through the night. He'd stopped offering to drive on long trips. He'd started making excuses to avoid evening events with friends. And he told me something that stayed with me. He used to love taking his wife on long Sunday afternoon drives. No destination, just open road and conversation. He hadn't done it in over 2 years. Not because of symptoms directly, but because the anxiety they'd created had quietly changed how he moved through the world. The turning point came one night around 3 in the morning. He was sitting on the edge of his bed after yet another bathroom trip, staring at the floor in the dark, and something shifted in him. "I'm tired," he told me. "Not tired the way you get at the end of a long day. Tired of planning my whole life around this." That was the night he decided to take it seriously. We started with 3 adjustments only. Hydration earlier in the day, significantly reduced after 7 in the evening. A 15-minute walk after dinner every night. No alcohol within 3 hours of bed. Nothing extreme. Nothing that required reinventing who he was. 6 weeks later, he came back, looking noticeably different. The exhaustion that had been sitting behind his eyes had softened. He said his sleep felt deeper, that he was waking once most nights instead of 3 or 4 times, that his mornings felt like mornings again. But the detail that stayed with me had nothing to do with symptoms or sleep data at all. He smiled and said, "My wife says I seem like myself again. She says I'm back in the room." That's what this is really about, not clinical measurements, not symptom checklists. Being back in the room, being present for the life you've built, taking the Sunday drives again. I share David's story not to make guarantees. Every person's physiology is different. I share it to show you what becomes genuinely possible when you stop accepting the silence and start taking consistent, intentional action. Let me bring everything together clearly. Number 1. Many prostate symptoms are influenced by daily habits far more than most men realize, and far more than most clinical conversations ever acknowledge. Number 2. Inflammation, poor sleep, chronic stress, physical inactivity, metabolic instability, and hydration timing all interact and compound each other over years. Number 3. Small, consistent changes applied steadily over months produce more meaningful results than intense, short-term efforts that aren't sustainable. Number 4. Waiting years to address early symptoms is one of the most costly decisions a man can make, not just for his health, but for the quality of his daily experience. You are not slowing down. Your body is asking for a different kind of attention than it needed when you were younger, and now you know exactly what that attention looks like. There is absolutely no shame in talking to your doctor about prostate health, urinary changes, or sleep disruption. These conversations are among the most common in men's medicine. Having them early is always better than having them after years of unnecessary suffering. Many men experience real, meaningful improvements when they finally stop normalizing the signals their body has been sending and start responding to them. Quietly, gradually, one consistent habit at a time. If something in this video landed for you today, please hit the like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach other men who need this conversation and haven't found it yet. Men who are quietly struggling and haven't been given real answers. If you're new here, I post every Tuesday and Friday. We cover men's health, healthy aging, energy, sleep science, hormonal balance, circulation, nutrition, and all the things the standard 15-minute doctor's appointment simply doesn't have time for. Subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss it. Now I want to hear from you specifically. Which of these habits do you think has had the biggest impact on how you feel after 50? Poor sleep? Sitting too much? Chronic stress? Hydration timing? Diet? Something I didn't even cover today? Drop it in the comments. Tell me where in the world you're watching from, too. I genuinely read far more of them than you'd expect, and those conversations are a real part of why I keep making these videos. In my next video, I'm covering something almost nobody in this space is talking about yet: the hidden connection between nighttime blood sugar spikes and morning fatigue in men over 60. Most men have chalked this up to just getting older for years. The reality is far more specific and far more fixable than that. You'll want to see it. I'll see you there.